But we had a great time, and I just want to begin tonight by thanking everybody who came out. I want to thank Miss Kim for making that video. She made that slideshow video, whatever you want to call it, for us. We had a lot of people that came out, and they were willing to give up free time in order that these kids could have a good time and they could learn about God this week. And I appreciate that. And I really want to especially thank our youth. All of them did a phenomenal job. Some taught, some helped in the kitchen, some helped in games, some were in the booth helping me. But all of them showed up, and they all did a great job. They were ready to serve every day. I didn't have anybody complaining about, oh, what are we doing today, or what do I have to do? None of them, no complaining, and that does my heart good. Pastor West quoted 3 John 4 this morning, and it's so true. Nothing brings me more joy than to see my children in the faith serving God and walking in the truth, and we got to see that this week. But our theme this week had to do with creation. And our theme verse was Colossians 1:16. You saw it on the end of the video. But it's for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And the him the Apostle Paul is referring to in this verse is Christ. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But the entire universe, all of creation, all things were made by him and for him. And we need to understand that. If you're going to understand anything about the Christian life, you're going to understand anything about our existence, we need to get that. And so, where do we go? Where do we go to learn about creation? The beginning, right? In Genesis. So that's where we're going to be tonight. But what is the purpose? What is the purpose of all of this? Some people say, well, we learn all these things and we really don't understand why we learn them. What is the purpose that we read in Genesis? Why? Why are they there? Why is it there? The opening pages of Scripture reveal to us who God is. They reveal to us where everything came from. They reveal why creation exists. And the creation account that we read in Genesis, it's not about giving us the mechanics of how God created the universe. Okay? It doesn't say he took all these molecules and he put hydrogen and oxygen together and made water. We don't need to know that. It's not about the mechanics. But it's about showing us the greatness and the power and the wisdom of God in creation. And creation calls us to worship the Creator. And the first thing I want you to see tonight is the Creator's authority. The Creator has authority over the things that he has created. So if you look at Genesis chapter 1 in verse 1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. We see that God existed before everything else. Before anything else, there was God. He was in the beginning. And creation is the work of God alone. Now, I want to clarify something that Pastor West said this morning. He said that nothing didn't create everything. Right? That's not possible, that nothing creates everything, okay? It's a foundational philosophical principle, and if you've heard it before in Latin, it's ex nihilo nihil fit. And what that means is out of nothing, nothing comes. Right? Everybody understands that. But God created everything out of nothing. He created it ex nihilo. How did he do that? Because he is something. He is not nothing. He is something. He's the greatest, right? He is the original. He is the prime mover. He's the unmoved mover. He's the uncaused cause. That's who he is. There's only one eternal being, and it's God. And he brought order and fullness to something that was chaos and empty, right? Our world, our universe was not an accident. It was created. And I think we understand that. And life has purpose and life has meaning because it comes from God, the Creator. That's why it has purpose. That's why it has meaning. And the entire Trinity, if you notice, is involved in the creation. The Spirit moved on the face of the deep, it says. And if you go over to John chapter 1, which is a parallel to Genesis 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the same was in the beginning with God. And verse 3 says, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. The Son created. And you go to Hebrews chapter 1, in verses 1 and 2, it says that God spoke through his Son. He did speak through prophets, but then he spoke through his Son, and he created, how? By the Son. And so you see in the remainder of Genesis 1, you see the Father speaking things into existence. So you have the Spirit creating, you have the Son creating, you have the Father speaking things into existence. And so we see the Creator's power, that's the next thing we see, is we see his power in full display. And if you notice as we're going to read these different days of creation, look at how many times you see, and God said. Does it say he did? It says, and he said, and what happened? It happened. He spoke it, and it happened, right? Look at verse 3. It said, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Day 1, God creates light, and he divides the light from the darkness. Now, what was this light? A lot of people get confused by this. They're like, well, how was there any light? Because there wasn't a sun yet. Well, he created light. Okay, John 8:12 says that Jesus is the light. And if you go even further to the very end, the last book of the Bible, almost to the end, Revelation chapter 21 and verse 23, it says that the Lamb is the light, and God's glory is the thing that is going to light the new heaven and the new earth. There's no need for the sun. There's no need for the moon, because God is the light. And listen, light is the thing that most closely equates to God's glory. Okay? You read, every time someone sees God, what do they see? He's so bright, they can't even look. Right? The light is so intense, they can't see because of his glory. Right? And you need to understand that light illuminates everything. Light makes everything visible. That's how it works. Okay? I was in printing and packaging for a long time, 20-something years. And I had to manage color. And Brother Rick knows how horrible that is and how many people see color different or how they see it. And the thing that you have to understand is light influences color. And in the absence of light, there is no color. None. How do you tell what color something is in the dark? You can't. Right? There's no light. And so the same is true of truth. When there's no light, you can't see the truth. You can't see the color, you can't see the truth. And look at the pattern there of light and darkness, of night and day, over and over in Genesis, over and over in Scripture. That pattern is repeated. And if you notice, it says it's always the night first and then the day, right? And that's how Hebrews counted days. Y'all remember that? It's the night and then the day, and then that's 24 hours, right? We think of a day starting when it's daytime, but really it starts at night, right? What time? Midnight? It's nighttime, right? So that's how they counted days. It's the dark and then it's the light. So look at verse 6. It says, God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, or the expanse, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So now again, God is dividing, right? Day 2, again, God divides. Now he's dividing the water that's on the earth from the water that's in the atmosphere. He's creating an environment that's suitable for life. And he's doing this by dividing the water from the water, okay? Now, some of you think that in Louisiana, like he missed, okay? Because it's like when you take a breath, it's like taking a drink of water. But not so, right? He divided the water from the water. So you have water in the atmosphere, and you have water on the earth. But he did that by dividing things. And so that's what he did on day 2. Look at verse 9. So then God said, let the waters under heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. So day 3, God divides again. He divides the water from the land. He calls the land earth. He calls the water seas. And he causes the plants and the trees and the grass and the fruit trees. It causes all that to grow. Now, and we're like, oh yeah, we get this. Yeah, that's easy. We know. But we need to understand that none of this would have worked if God wouldn't have separated everything. If he would have started by dividing the light from the dark. If he wouldn't have divided the atmosphere from the water. If he wouldn't have divided the water from the land. None of that would have worked. And we have to see that God is very ordered. And he's laying the foundation for life. And how is he doing it? He's doing it just by speaking. He's speaking and it's happening. And he knows what he's doing. It has an order. It has a rhyme and a reason to it. Now, look at verse 14. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the 4th day. Day 4. Day 4 is my favorite day. This is my favorite day. It always has been. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always been fascinated with stars. I've always been fascinated with the moon, trying to see the sun, even though you're not supposed to, right? I asked a kid today, in the class, I was like, have you ever seen the sun? He's like, no, we're not supposed to look at it. I'm like, okay, that's fair. But I was fascinated by all those things, the planets, and I wanted to be an astronaut. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. God had other plans. And this is better than being an astronaut. But I used to lay in the bed of my truck at night, and I would go in the front yard because we had one light, and it was in the backyard. And if you went in the front yard, you couldn't see that light. And so I'd lay in the bed of my truck and watch the stars. And there's just something just so peaceful about seeing the stars at night and seeing what God has made. And you're just, and when you say it's awesome, like you have a sense of awe of what God has created. And you are so small, and you understand that. And one of the things, besides that, even one of the things that makes this day my favorite is the statement that's made in verse 16. It says, he made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Just like a footnote, the stars also. That is the understatement to end all understatements, is that he made the stars also. Didn't spend a whole lot of time. We look and we're like, do you have any idea how many stars we think exist? Any idea? Okay? You can't count them. We've tried, right? And every time they count them, they're like, oh, there's more now. Because they look at something that was a blob and they're like, oh, that's a star. Now they get closer, like, oh, that's a whole bunch of stars. That's actually another galaxy. Like, oh, it's a lot. Okay? So at minimum, a minimum of 200 billion trillion stars. Okay? It sounds like a made-up number. It sounds like a number that a kid would just spout off, But that's what they say, 200 billion trillion stars. So if you want to see what it looks like, what the number looks like, that's what it looks like, okay? Now, it's an almost incomprehensible number. One girl's like, how did we count them all? I was like, we didn't count them. Like, nobody could count them. You can spend your whole life, many lifetimes, and you couldn't count that high. If you counted one per second, you can't do it. And so science has just recently said, they're trying to figure out, they're like, well, we know it's this many, like, how do we have people get a handle on this so they can understand? And you know what they said? They said that this number is basically the same as the number of every grain of sand on every beach on earth. That's funny to me, because that's exactly what God told Abraham in Genesis 22, verse 17. He told him, your descendants are going to be like the stars of the sky or the sand which is upon the seashore. Now, how did he know that? He did, right? Way before science ever knew that. Now they're like, hey, we got an idea. Like, God's like, yeah, I already know that. I did that. But he created every celestial body in the universe. He made the sun to shine in the day. He made the moon to reflect the sun's light at night. And he made the stars also. And it says that it was good. Look at verse 20. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. So day 5, God creates fish and birds. And notice again, they all reproduced after their kind. Okay? They're different. I don't know if you've ever been outside and you look at a fish and you look at a bird and they don't look anything alike. Okay? They have different makeups, and you can look like, oh yeah, I can tell that's a bird and that's a fish. I know there's fish, flying fish, but they don't actually fly, right? They just jump really high out of the water and sometimes into your boat. But fish make more fish. That's how it works. Birds make more birds. That's how it's worked. That's how it works now. That's how it's always worked, right? That's what Genesis tells us. That's how it's always been, not any different. And God says, and that is good, because that's the way it should be. Look at verse 24. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beasts of the earth after his kind, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and God saw that it was good. So day 6, God creates the land animals. It says he created the cattle. We know that. That's bovine, right? Oxen, sheep, goats, all those things that we consider cattle. And then the creeping things, right? Everything that everybody goes, ugh. Right? Lizards, frogs, insects. Those are the creeping things because they creep around. And he talks about beasts. Now, beasts, we think of beasts as a large animal. That's what also include, we think of a bear maybe as a beast, a lion, a tiger, right? But this would include dinosaurs. You're like, well, but it doesn't say dinosaurs. Well, that word didn't exist, okay? It didn't exist when the Bible was first translated. It didn't exist when it was translated again, right? It's a very new word. That's why the Bible doesn't talk about dinosaurs, because that word didn't exist. But it talks about dinosaurs other places. That's just not what it calls them. These are the beasts, right? And they were all made according to their kind. That's what it says. They were made according to their kind. They reproduced after their kind. There's no in-betweens. There's not something becomes something else. That's how it was, and it was good. And up to this point, God has created everything by his word, everything by speaking it into existence. And his creation displays his design. You look at these animals, and they're so well designed. I don't know how you could think that they came from ooze. I don't get it. Like, they're all different, and they all have special things, and they're all designed to work the way they work, right? So his creation displays his design. It displays his goodness. And it tells us that he's a God of order. He did these things in a specific order, and he put these animals together in a specific order for a specific purpose. Now, in the final act of his creation, we see something different. We see the Creator's purpose for mankind. It's different. Verse 26 says, "And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image, in the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in the which the fruit of a tree is yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, or for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat, or for them to eat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. So it starts out, it says, let us make man in our own image. What is the us? That is the triune God. That is the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. Right? And let us make man. What is man? Man is a body, a soul, and a spirit. We are made in God's image. We are a triune being. And we are different. We are different. I hope you know that. And I know I keep saying that, but in this day and age, I don't think I can say it enough. He didn't speak us into being. What did he do? He formed us from the dust. Genesis 2:7 says, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. We have dignity because we're made in God's image. We have worth because we bear his image. Every human life is valuable. Every human life is valuable. And to quote Dr. Seuss, a person is a person no matter how small. Y'all get that? Every life, doesn't matter how small, has value. And our value and our identity is found in being made in the image of God. We didn't evolve from some other animal, some other life form. God formed us in his very likeness. That's what he did. And after God created man and woman, he declared it was very good. Then what did he have left to do? What came next was the Creator's rest. Genesis chapter 2. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the hosts of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work, which God created and made. Listen, God didn't rest because he was tired. That's why we need rest, because we get tired, we wear out. Right? And after a week of Bible school, most of you know what I'm talking about. But we rest because we're tired. God didn't rest because he was tired. He rested because his work was done. He was done. This rest established a pattern of rest, a pattern of worship, a pattern of reflection for the rest of time. Okay? God is a God of order and a God of completion. He doesn't leave things unfinished. He doesn't. And that's one of the things that drives me crazy. I can't leave things unfinished. I have to finish it. And sometimes that drives my wife crazy, because used to I would stay at work for long, long periods of time because I have to finish this. And they're like, come back and do it tomorrow. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I have to finish it today. But God doesn't leave things unfinished. And in this pattern, what we should do is we should pause weekly to reflect on his faithfulness. We should pause weekly to worship him. We should pause weekly to remember all of his goodness. That's why we're here today. That's why we're here tonight. Right? Now, it's not the Sabbath, but it's the new Sabbath. Right? It's not Saturday, it's Sunday, because that's the day that Jesus rose from the dead. So, We learn all these things. We learn about creation, and it's awesome. We love the things. Kids love to talk about the animals. They love to talk about the planets and all those things. But what are we supposed to do? What are we meant to do with all this? What is our response to this? The first thing we need to do is to recognize the power and the greatness of God, the power and the greatness of Christ. Now, in the parallel passage in John 1, in verse 10, it says, "He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came into his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor the will of flesh, nor the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." Listen, our response is to believe. That's our response. We hear that God did this, and we believe it. We don't reject him. We don't reject him like so many people have done. He created the universe. He created you. And deep down, everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. Romans 1:20 says that we know the invisible things are seen in creation. We know that there is a God, and no one has an excuse. We're all without an excuse. No one has a valid excuse to say that God doesn't exist. No one has a valid excuse not to believe in God. He created everything. And more importantly, he created you in his image. Psalm 139:14 says that he knit us together, and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are completely different than the rest of creation. We have dignity, we have value because we're made in the image of God. So what do we need to do? We need to believe, we need to embrace our identity. We need to embrace our Creator. We need to embrace his plan. And so what do? We respond in repentance and faith. We respond in worship and obedience. Matthew 5:16 says that we should let our light shine. Why? So everyone will say, "Good job"? No. So that they see our good works and they glorify God, our Father in heaven. And listen, the light we shine is not our light. It's a reflection of Christ. Christ is like the sun and we're like the moon. All we do is reflect his light. That's what we're to do. And as we stand together and we bring the service to a close, and Brother Russ comes, and Maddie comes back and gets ready to be baptized. Listen, the story of creation ultimately points us to the Creator. It points us to the God who spoke the world and life into existence. And that same God is the God who brings new life through Christ. God brought physical light in Genesis 1. Now he brings spiritual light to those who will trust in Jesus. Now the question is, where are you? Where are you tonight? Where are you in the grand scheme of all this? Do you need to repent and let God bring that light, his light, into your darkness? Do you need to commit to reflect that light to others? To do a better job of letting your light shine so God can be glorified? Which one of those is it? Whatever you need to do, the invitation is open. Commit to God tonight to be a light in this dark world.